Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to this week's Power Hour presented by Advantage Route Systems. Our presenter today is Mark Boucher, and this week he will be taking us through in detail our new release 703R3. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat box as they arise, and we will focus on them at the end of the session. Please be advised that we are recording this session, so if there's anything that you missed, don't fret. We will be sending out links to this video that will be located on ars247.com as well as YouTube. Again, thank you for joining us today. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Okay, welcome. Thank you everybody for joining us today for the Power Hour. Today we're going to be covering some of the major changes in the R3 release, which will be available at end of business day tomorrow. We will go ahead and set up a link on our website as well, which will be available for everybody who does have a support plan in order to download. Before we start with any detail here or start talking about any of the new changes, just as a quick reminder, everybody must be on Windows 7 or Windows Server 2008 RT or newer in order to install this update. You also must have IE 10 installed or update to IE 10 before you're allowed to do so. The reason for that is there are several security changes that are required for this, so older operating systems will not be able to install R3 or some of our most recent updates. There's also been a number of credit card updates that only pertain to security for processors. Those, of course, are going to be implemented. They've already been implemented in R3. Anybody who has received notification from their credit card processor that they have until deadline date to get updated, these are the changes they are talking about. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So there's a number of changes, of course, and small fixes that we've included in the new system. One of the first things we're going to go ahead and start with today before we move into show a couple of the handheld changes is just some desktop changes. Some of these are minor. Some of them are features that people have been looking for quite a while. One of the first things that you will notice, especially if you use these features, is if you do a new customer, we have now included the option on the lower left-hand corner to check whether or not this is going to be a consolidated bill statement customer. That's something that several people have asked for. You've always had the ability to select the master bill account number, but now you can designate a new customer as consolidated billing as well. Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and keep the screen here. Oops. Okay, sorry about that. For anybody who wasn't able to see my screen, that again was located under Lists, Wizards, New Customer Wizard, and it's in the lower left-hand corner here. Looks like we were not sharing our screen for just a moment there. Okay, moving right along. Another new feature is when you are creating a new handheld class. So this would be under Lists, Routes, Handheld Class. One of the important things to remember on the Hardware tab is to select your printer type and your printer connection type. Because most of our printers now almost exclusively use Bluetooth, we don't really use infrared for any of those connection types anymore. There is going to be a new default. So when you add a new handheld class going forward, we are going to automatically set it to a Bluetooth type connection. If you have an older printer that you intend to use or an earlier model that does use infrared, just remember that you will actually have to go back and change that to infrared because right off the bat we will default to Bluetooth. As always, when updating, one of the things that you're going to want to make sure you check on is your security levels for your employees. Anytime we include a new feature or make any changes, under Lists, Employee Setup, and Security Level Codes, you can, of course, customize what your employees have access to or do not have access to. Most notably, there is a new feature. If I were to modify this, the easiest way to find it is to sort by CMC, or simply search for it on the left-hand side here. A requested change was recently to allow a read-only feature to be included in the status monitor. If you do not want your employees to have any ability to resend messages, you can now come in here and set the status monitor to read, write, or all. Beforehand, this was all or nothing. Typically, we will advise people to come set their administrator new permissions to all. Otherwise, it's not going to be set to all by default. If anybody updates and says, I can't resend an email from the status monitor, that would be why. Just a very small change, but now you can ensure that people aren't sending messages again when they're not supposed to be. So, for anybody who missed those steps earlier, that was under lists, employee setup, and security level codes. For anybody unfamiliar with this screen, you can come in here and change any of their security levels to read, write, or all. If you are not sure what security level a specific employee has, you can locate their security level by going to Lists, Employees, and on the top right of their employee profile, it will say security level. And as you can see here, this one is set to administrator. You are able to create as many security levels as you need to assign to different employees. You can see here that we have administrator, cleric, and driver by default. If you need to edit those for any reason or create a new class, that is under the screen that we were previously in. Another brand new feature that has been added to R3, which we hope many of you will find very helpful, when you are going to send information to a customer from the invoice screen, you can, of course, come here and simply select everybody. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a random customer. We'll use 112. So if I, for example, wanted to send a customer an invoice, let's say they didn't get a copy or are requesting another copy of this invoice, I can come to the Invoice tab, select all periods, and hit View Invoices. Now let's say they said, sorry, I didn't receive a copy for my last quarterly rent bill. Can you please resend me that copy? I can select this invoice and simply hit the email icon. Now that feature has been there for quite a while, but the new ability that we give you is to attach a template. You'll see the bottom half of the screen has changed now so that I can come in here and select a template. The path is shown right below that, so if you need to create or add a new template, you can do so. You'll drop it right in that folder and it will appear here for you to use. This will allow you to add any type of custom greeting, message, maybe an accounting message if this is a past due invoice, or any other type of template that you would like to create to attach this to your invoice that you're sending to the customer. Multiple invoices as well, but the template feature that we've added will now allow you to send a nice little customized touch that you can use for just about anything. Including if you'd like to simply create a generic sales message or promote a new product. Every time you send out a copy of this invoice manually, you can do so. If you are not sure or need assistance creating a template, we'd be more than happy to help you with that as well. Templates are available by contacting our tech support.
There's no way I can be there. I'm so sorry.
So that, of course, is a very handy feature. Something a little bit more personalized rather than just send them a copy of their invoice and nothing in the message body of the email.
Yeah, understood. Okay, thank you.
Another new feature, speaking of invoices, if I were to go create a new invoice or wish to select for any reason an invoice here to Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like we got a message that says people are hearing somebody else taking a phone call. If anybody is currently not on mute, if you could please do so. We'll go ahead and mute them on our end as well, just in case. Sorry about that. Okay, looks like everybody who was not muted has been muted before. Getting back to where we were, if I choose to send an 8.5 by 11 copy of a specific invoice and I come over here and print the invoice to preview, you'll notice there's now 3 new options available. Now to stress, this is only available if it's an 8.5 by 11 invoice. If I select a handheld option, those disappear. But my 3 new options are show narrative, show ticket number, and use pre-printed return address. Several people have asked for the ability to write a custom message. Maybe you want to say, here is a copy of the invoice reprint you requested, or something to the effect of, please check out our website. Whatever the message may be, or even if this is an accounting note that simply says this invoice has been credited or adjusted per your request, the narrative field, of course, shows up here. If I was going to include that message, you can simply type it onto the narrative, which customers have not had the ability to see beforehand. We'll set this to a current date. Now when I actually go preview a copy of this, if I do say show narrative, I can of course print or fax or email like always, but now I can simply have one pop up here below the signature of the employee, or of the customer, sorry. So below the customer signature is where the invoice narrative that you type will pop up. Again, that is not available on handheld invoices. That is only on 8.5 by 11 invoices. The other 2 options, of course, are fairly common, but they are new. You now have the ability to include the ticket number or use pre-printed return address forms. Looks like we had a question pop up on the screen, but I missed the rest of that. Let's check our chat window here. Will the narrative show up after the invoice is posted? Yes, it will. You've always had the ability to show that, but that does actually modify the PDF copy of the invoice that you've been seeing. So if you were to go reprint that later, remember it does have the invoice narrative. Okay. Another new feature is we have now added the ability to print multiple copies of a new delivery or service order. Now there are 2 ways to set up this next feature, of course. If I were to simply create a delivery order, you will notice that on the bottom right-hand corner, the format and the number of copies now populate on the lower right-hand corner. So I can come here and I can simply say, I want to use the 1S version, and I want to print 2 copies. So when I create an order, we will print 2 copies. To those of you who already use this feature, you know that you can set that up as a default by going to File, Local Settings, and clicking on the Reports tab. The Reports tab controls a couple of items, but I can select a pre-sale message copy or a pre-sale message phone copy format beforehand, as well as the number of copies that I wish to print. For anybody who's unfamiliar with the screen, I can also default to using an 8.5 by 11 invoice format. Now remember, this is a local setting, so each user will need to set this up on their own local machine. But again, that was under File, Local Settings on the Reports tab. or simply on the delivery order screen itself on the lower right-hand corner. Oops, thought we had another question for a moment. Okay, moving along. Another new feature for those of you using Mango Mapping. It was brought to our attention recently that if customers exist at the same address, when you optimize the route and capture the latitude and longitude, if those are the same numbers, there was no sub-sort option. Essentially, if you have a customer, let's say, in an office building with multiple floors, or in a warehouse type setup where the driver may be making multiple stops, if you have 4 or 5 stops scheduled for that and they all have the exact same address in place, therefore getting the same latitude and longitude, we needed a way of sorting out which one of those stops was going to be serviced first. So essentially we now have a feature that we call floor or subsequence number, however you want to refer to it. This number will then allow you to assign an order in which those customers are going to be serviced. If you decide to use this feature, please note that you can go from -99 up to $9.99. So you can simply use whichever order you want here. You could do it by floor order if somebody's on floor 2 and floor 8. You could do it that way, or you can simply designate these customers at the same address however you'd like them to be serviced. So that is a new feature. Somebody did ask earlier, does that require purchase of RM Live? Does not necessarily require the use of RM Live to be able to optimize your routes. But if you're not familiar with Mango Mapping, you can, of course, contact our support department if you would like to purchase it. You can also contact several people here in the office. We can funnel you to the correct contact for that. So that is a very nifty feature, especially for somebody who has multiple stops that they wish to optimize by more than just the route address. As we all know, there's sometimes customers that have sometimes a dozen stops in the same location. Okay, one more feature we'll talk about here for the desktop is we now offer the ability to create default products from sales history. This feature is located under Branch Setup. So if we go to File, Branch Setup, and select the Customer tab, this will take a look at the number of months that you specify. In other words, if I come over here and say I would like to create my default products for the customer from the last 3 months worth of purchases, you now no longer have to go attach a price list or add each product to each individual customer. You could simply let the system decide to handle this by going through as many months of sales history as you select, and we will then create that list for you automatically of everything that they have purchased. That is also a very handy feature, especially if somebody's been serviced for several months now but never had default products or a price list assigned to them to begin with. So again, that was under File, Branch Setup, and that is right here on the Customer tab. Hopefully everybody will find that very useful. Yes, that should be going off of the purchase price. Although typically I believe we're going to put them in at 0. Okay, now there is another thing that we're going to move on now. I'm going to actually show you my handheld for this one. Excuse me one moment while I switch over to this. Before I actually switch to the handheld, there is a feature that requires just a moment of setup. For those of you using load requests, we now have the ability to default the load request by a specific number of days, or simply allow the driver to select the date for which this load order should be set to. This is located under Lists, Routes, Handheld class. Now, on the Upload tab, you will see a couple new options here towards the middle of the page. Automatically create load orders from load request is of course an option that has been there for quite some time. But the new options here are allow scheduling of load order or setting a specific number of default days that will default to. Those are both new options. So if your driver typically comes back into the warehouse and says, I'm going to need products A, B, and C loaded on my truck for tomorrow, we've always defaulted the load request to the next day. And if you're automatically creating a load order from the load request, it will simply pop up in the system. Now the driver, as they interact with customers, because of course you can't have multiple load orders on the same handheld, they can remember to bring a specific item to that customer and remember to load it on the truck. So if I were to hit allow scheduling of load order and save my changes, when I switch to my handheld here, just like normal, I'm going to go to my load unload menu. I'm going to tap load request and log in. And right down here it says load for 5/11/2017. I can change this. Simply by tapping directly on the date, I can now say this load request is actually going to default to next Monday or Thursday if I'm scheduling these a week out, or whatever the driver decides. That way it will still be uploaded, and if I am creating load orders automatically, it will simply create a load order dated for the day that the driver selects. That date will also print on the load request printout so that they can see for sure which date they created the load request for. That is a very handy feature. We hope that'll help everybody out with managing inventory, and hopefully it'll give the drivers a little bit more flexibility when it comes to requesting certain products be loaded on their truck. The other new feature that I'm going to cover on the handheld, this one is a new feature that's one of my favorite actually. When I select my customer list for the day, you'll notice that there are now some options on the top right, or some little icons at least. We will now show automatically the customer status on the top right of the customer selection. If they are past due, if they are COD, or if they are on hold, you no longer have to open up this individual customer in order to see the status. We do still obviously display the flag when this is selected, but beforehand the only way I knew this customer is past due is when I clicked on this customer and saw the status highlighted in red at the top. Now if I am servicing 20, 30, 40 customers throughout the day, I can simply from my one menu scroll through and see my past due customers or my COD customers or my hold customers in advance. That should save everybody quite a bit of time, and it will give the driver a nice heads up if they do have to call in and get a release code before servicing one of these customers. Now that doesn't require any extra setup. The only feature here on the handheld that will require an extra setup option is the load request feature. You do have to have the ability to select the date turned on beforehand. If you were to select this once you update, remember it will take effect once the driver uploads and downloads one more time. That just about covers it for all of some of the newer features that we're adding in there. In addition, there are also some minor fixes and some other options. Route optimization as a process has been improved and will be a little bit snappier now. Are there any questions from anybody currently on the session or anything that they would like me to clarify before we wrap things up here? I'll pause for a moment so people can type. Yes, again, to reiterate the software requirements, as an operating system, if you are running Route Manager from a mapped drive, you must be on Windows 2007 or newer. As a server, it is Microsoft Server 2008 RT or newer. Regular 2008 will not work. It does need to be the second release, which is RT. So Windows 10, of course, works just fine. Windows 8. If you're on ME or Server 2003 or XP or Windows 2003 or one of the older operating systems, you will need to upgrade before updating to Route Manager. IE 10, Internet Explorer, must also be upgraded to Internet Explorer 10. If you download the program for some reason but do not have compatibility, we will warn you in advance. Part of those is simply because you must be running .NET 4.6.2, which you will be prompted to update before continuing. But the operating system, unfortunately, we don't have any control over. You will simply have to contact your system admin or update the software yourself. Yes, the update will be available by end of business day tomorrow. That will be available on our website. Some people have already requested that they get the update once it's released. We will go ahead and start sending out those messages to help you schedule an update as well. Oops, sorry, there's one more question. I missed that last part. We will not remove any default products if you choose to let sales history create those default products for you. I can confirm that, but I believe we are only going to add them, not replace them. That may be something we're going to have to set up for you using a global change. So if you do have a list of default products already on a customer and you simply want the system to handle updating those default products based on a number of sales history, it would be best to run a removal or price change or whatever it is that you want taken care of beforehand, before activating that feature. Okay, looks like I might still have one more person typing, so we'll wait just a moment here. I think I got to everybody's questions. Okay. If there are no more questions, I think that just about wraps up our preview of R3. Like I said, it will be available very soon. By end of business day tomorrow, we will get that updated on our website. If anybody does not want to perform their own update, they are, of course, more than welcome to contact support. We'd be happy to help you schedule an update and run that for you. Just as a reminder, all users do have to be logged out at the time. So either at the beginning or end of your business day, whichever is most convenient, we'd be happy to jump in and assist you with running that update. Excellent. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This, of course, will be available on our YouTube channel soon. And if anybody does have any more questions, we will, of course, make the full release notes available on our website as well, where you can go through every single item that we've changed since the R2 release a couple months ago. All right, thank you.